Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. It's such an honor to be here, and to the public, New York Public Library, and to Seven Stories Press for publishing this anthology. Who knew that we would end up here? This has been a 20-year odyssey, but it's been a 20-year-long labor of love to collect these stories and a celebration of strippers throughout the extraordinary voices of the writers in this book. It focuses on stripping because there are so many forms of sex work, and I really believe there should be an anthology for each one, or many anthologies, and there probably are, and many, many anthologies about burlesque itself. So that's why it focused on stripping, and each one of the writers up here has stripped, among many of the other things every writer has done, including writing extraordinary stories. It started, this entire anthology started in the late 90s when I met an ex-stripper, ex-boxer, an ex-filmmaker, Jill Morley, who had come to LA with her stories and her friends' stories about stripping in New York and New Jersey with, well, they called it go-go dancing back then. And she wanted to make it like a series of short films called Go-Go Shorts. And of course, like many things in LA, it did not happen. And I inherited this brown box filled with stories. And I decided I wanted to make it into a book. And that, it took a while to expand the stories. And I expanded my search, and that search took a really long, long time. But one of the things that happened over the course of that time was that that sex work, which is a term coined by the late, great Carol Lee, who died only last year, in the last few months, it became a term it became a term of pride rather than shame. And then I began to find a lot more stories as time went on, stories of pride, stories of contain many other qualities. But instead of going on that long journey, there's something more special tonight, and special because we're all here and we're in New York, which is that all the writers here tonight are hometown girls. They're all from New York. And all of these hometown girls have been shameless from the start. Truly, in the words of the first reader tonight, the legendary Jo Weldon. Jo has been, she has been talked about and was mentioned to me by everyone as I was collecting these stories. And I was totally intimidated about speaking to her, although everybody said, no, she's really great. She's really nice. You'll really like her. Even so, it took me a long time to call her. But these writers who I finally got in touch with, they all of them up here, have boldly spoken up and performed and written their truths, fought against injustices, and continue to fight as they write. They have been models for the next generation of strippers, younger strippers, although we hate to talk about age up here, one of whom is up here, and who herself is a model for the next generation. But so to begin with the legendary Jo Weldon. Jo has been, Miss Jo, has been famous for running the School of Burlesque, for writing books like The Burlesque Handbook, and more recently, Fierce, The History of Leopard Print, which had the amazing honor of being sold at MoMA, because it's gorgeous, and everybody here has to have a copy. And she's done many other things. She was just telling me that she is being honored. She's getting an award from the tourist, what is it, the tourist?
Tour Guides of New York.
Tour Guides of New York, among other things. You'll have to ask her afterwards. But I did not know that Jo had stripped in clubs. And that's when I had to reach out and touch her. So I got, and I get in touch with her, I mean. Sorry, Jo.
Good.
I would like to, though. So finally I asked her if she ever stripped, and she's like, yeah, sure, I stripped. I have some rough notes, and I can turn them into a story if you want me to. And I'm like, oh, yeah, would you? And then really fast. I mean, she turned a story on really fast, so I realized that besides being the queen of burlesque, that Jo is also a magician. So, Jo, before I mess more up and, say a lot more than I should, I would love it if you would grace us with a piece of your story.
Thank you, Lizzie. And I would say Lizzie is a magician because it is really hard to get a bunch of people together in a room and finish a film and finish an anthology and make something happen at the amazing New York Public Library. And I'm so grateful that everybody's here. Thank you for coming. So my story, this is a edited version of my story, edited for time, called Take Your Passion and Make It Happen. Oh my God, I can actually read this without my glasses. Okay. I had always wanted to be a stripper, not a dancer, not a showgirl, not a movie star, but a stripper. I loved sassy, smart, shameless Gypsy Rose Lee, as portrayed by Natalie Wood in the 1962 musical based on her life. I also loved the dramatic teasers at the beginning of the film The Silencers, in which three consummately skilled performers introduced the movie's titles: a terrifying brunette who literally tears her clothes off, an icy bouffant blonde fully nude and strategically juggling a boa, and Sid Charisse, who devastated just by moving her eyes to the left and to the right. Each of them was powerfully individual, yet all shared a silkily sensual confidence that I, though full of earnest and awkward commitment to the form, possessed in no abundance. I thought real strippers were party girls who were glamorous, but not as perfectly put together as models in magazines. They seemed a little less perfectly groomed, possibly even a little messy. They seemed to have written themselves with their gimmicks and taglines and to have created glamour from adversity by creating roles for themselves to play instead of auditioning for roles created by someone else. When I was in high school, I talked a friend into stripping out of our matching nylon jumpsuits during a sleepover, creating our own amateur routines to afternoon delight. It was clear to me that it was a performance of some sexual meaning, but not of a sexual act. I was still a bit too young to need a lot of money or sex, but I was excited by the idea of having much of both, and I was more than ready, as soon as I moved out of my parents' house, to go wherever the money and the sex could be had. I figured strippers were in that place. I had my dream. I was in Atlanta when I turned 18 in 1980 and had driven by the Classy Cat on Piedmont Road more times than I could count. I wanted glamour and I wanted sleaze, and young as I was, I knew that anything that described itself as classy was bound to be sleazy. Also, I was a Leo born in the year of the tiger, and anything about cats felt as if it belonged to me. It had to be destiny. One afternoon, I made the plunge, boldly going where only my imagination had gone before. I walked in feeling acutely self-conscious, but as my eyes adjusted to the rank, smoky atmosphere, I knew I was finally home. It was dark, mostly red, with sultry top 40 songs playing on a jukebox. The light came from behind the bar, above the stage, below the plexiglass floors of the stages, and from the cigarette and video game machines along the wall. The place smelled like liquor and hairspray and ravaged carpet. A few men were scattered about, managing to look both furtive and supremely confident. A pear-shaped stripper with long, luxuriant black hair and a calm, almost dazed expression was on the stage, swaying back and forth. She had a lopsided, dirty green flower on the side of her leg, which I slowly realized was a wad of money stuffed into the sequined garter that circled her thigh. I was the happiest I had ever been in my short life. Behind the bar, a mild-mannered man of about 30 was rubbing a glass with a towel, staring off into space. I walked up to him, sure I was in the right place, but not sure how to qualify to stay there. "Hi," I said. "I'm Cheryl," not my real name. I had gotten it from Riff Randall's brunette sidekick in rock and roll high school, to whom I had been told I bore a remarkable resemblance. "I'm looking for a job." He turned his mild eyes to me, and with all the worldliness of a chivalrous and deceitful Southern gentleman, understood me instantly and completely. Have you ever worked in a titty bar before? He drawled sweetly, knowing the answer. Titty bar, my brain echoed. Oh my God, what an awesome phrase. No, I said, but I've always wanted to. You've always wanted to, he said, amused. Can you dance? I've got some moves, I said, although I realized my vintage-inspired, slow stripper zipper tees and my sinuous glove peel might not suit this spandex place. Let me see your ID. The drinking age in Atlanta in the fall of 1980, and therefore the age of entry into titty bars, was 18 at that time. I showed him my driver's license. He sent me into the dressing room to talk to Endora, not her real name, the house mother, who was the most fabulous old bitchy femme I had ever met. She was probably about the age I am now. I adored her and her impeccable style. She had red hair and a beehive, just like one of Matt Helm's girlfriends, and daggerish nails and eyes. I was enraptured. I knew immediately she had been a star, swilling champagne and sucking celebrity cock in limos, being showered with minks and diamonds. My hero, and God, how she hated me on sight. She lent me a used costume and charged me $5 to use it, given that, as she made it very clear, she'd have to wash it afterward as it was for sale for $15. There was a G-string, a thong, to go over the G-string, a little dress, and a pair of elbow-length gauntlets, all in a faded purple on neon green floral print. I wore a purple sequin garter on my leg, and I loved it so much. I decided I was never going to give up this dazzling ensemble, whether I got the job or not. Your shoes are horrible, she let me know. Men hate brown shoes. Thank you, I breathed, overcome with gratitude for this insight into the minds of men. You'll do 3 songs. First one, keep your clothes on. Second, take off the dress and the thong till you're in your G-string. When the last song starts, walk around the edge of the stage and show them you're ready to take off the G-string and see if you get more tips before you take it off. You can't take tips in your hand, only in the garter. I pranced out on the stage at the end of the bar. I was on stage. I was under the lights and above the lights, and music was playing and people were looking at me. The bartender, who was also the MC, got on the mic and suddenly sounding more like a radio DJ than a southern purveyor of fine liquor said, "This is Cheryl, guys. She's never danced before. Give her a little encouragement and let's see if we can get her out of those clothes." After a lifetime of dreaming about being paid to get naked, I couldn't imagine what they could have done to keep me in those clothes. The only song I remember from that set was She's So Cold by the Rolling Stones. Every man and every stripper in the place, and there were only men and strippers in the place, tipped me on every song, and at the end of the set, I had $34. $34 in 10 minutes. At the time, the minimum hourly wage was $3.10. I'd just made $3.40 a minute. I was going to be rich. I gave Endora 10 of the 34 so that I could keep the costume, then got a schedule from the bartender. I would be working the day shift 4 days a week. At the time, I didn't know that being assigned to day shift meant I wasn't looking so promising on stage as I had hoped. I could start the next day, although I would have to go to the police station to get an adult industry work permit first. And just like that, I was no longer dreaming it, I was being it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Well, our next reader, Jodie Shidaf, her writing I had read here and there in magazines and journals more often than I had count. It blew me away. And Jodie's own story was so unexpected and raw and written so hilariously at times, and it appeared so often that I swore it was going to be in this collection. I'm only going to cite the ones with the places with the best names: Ho, Hookers, Call Girls, and Rent Boys, John's, Marks, Tricks, and Chicken Hawks. So it turns out Jill, because there's only 1 degree of separation between writer/strippers, knew her too. It turns out they met in a bar, which is fitting given what Jodie writes about, but it was a literary event. They had both been in some book or magazine, or were going to be in some book or magazine together. And I felt it was a scoop to get her story. You know, as I was saying to Jodi earlier, I had some of her stories, and then I kept begging for this one and wearing Jodi down over the years. You know, can I have this story? May I have this story? I was in love with all of Jodi's work. You know, had I been able to publish an entire book of Jodi's work, I would have done that. So finally, Jodi gave in and allowed us to print this particular story. I have been in love with it. And, you know, somebody gave me the advice to be deeply in love with every story printed in the book. And I am very deeply, and I'm in love with this story. So, hey, will you take it away, Jodi, and please read a piece from it.
Thank you, honey. Thank you, Rudy. This is Rudy. First of all, I just want to say, feel free to publish a book of my stories. If you can make that happen, that's great. I'm Jodi, and Lizzie did have to beg, and I have to say I've been in a bunch of sex worker anthologies, and this book, if you haven't read it yet, if you haven't picked it up, hey, Dale, is incredible. It's just one of the smartest anthologies about us I have ever read. So, this is a section from Robbie's Mardi Gras. Oh, I don't need my reading glasses. And all you really need to know is that Fred is my father and Elaine is my mother. Everything else is, you'll get it. Life is easier when you know what's expected of you. Robbie's expected me to be sexy, so I was. My parents never expected me to work in a strip club, so I lied. I told them I worked in a restaurant in Manhattan. I took the train in from Long Island each day, changed into a leotard, layered the makeup on, made my money, took the Long Island Railroad back home, and slept. Fred had more time alone with Elaine. I had my freedom, and because I was expected to be self-supporting, and now I was, they felt they were doing a good job as parents. It was 3 cherries on the slot machine. It was 7 on the first roll. I'm 3 when I learned to shoot craps. Don't you take the kid's money, my mother screams from the kitchen. If the kid's going to learn to gamble, the kid's going to learn to lose. I'm 3 when I learned don't risk anything you're not willing to lose. It's one of my earliest memories. My father takes my 3 pennies when I lose. It's a week's allowance. But it's his way of teaching me how to count, his way of giving me an edge. 1 + 3 is 4. 2 + 2 is 4, the hard way. 1 + 1 is snake eyes. 1 and 6, craps, you lose. I'm 3 when I learned to play blackjack. I can add up to 21 like nobody's business by the time I get into 1st grade. Fred teaches the boy cousins about dealing from the bottom of the deck, spotting marked cards, palming dice, and switching the loaded pair in or out of a game. I never really learn enough to be in the game, but I start school knowing how to hold, how to bluff, and how to spot a tell. The ladies of Robbie's Mardi Gras were a spectacular range of what a woman could be. They were little Annie Fannies and biker bitches and divas and Jewish American princesses. They were West Indian and Brazilian and all-American. It was like walking along a beach collecting sea glass. They were both different and somehow the same, each one beautiful in a way that set her apart from all the other beautiful things there. Raven was pushing the hard edge of 30. Bony, tattooed, and black-leathered. She took me under her wing and turned me into an honest-to-goodness go-go bar barmaid. I learned the basics, how to mix, say, scotch and soda, Manhattans, whiskey sours, how to pour a beer, how to use a shot glass to short shot the cheapskates, overpour the tippers, and never get caught doing either. How to drink without getting drunk. She turned me into a polyglot, as long as no one expected anything more complicated than salut, skol, l'chaim, kanpai, and chin-chin. At the end of each shift, Raven folded the wad of bills from her tip cup into her pocket and straddled the bitch seat of her boyfriend's Harley, and they rode down Broadway. I wanted to be Raven. If the women were a virtual Crayola 64-pack of sensuality, the men were a package of No. 2 Ticonderoga pencils badly in need of sharpening. They were working stiffs on a lunch hour, drinking lunch and maybe their rent money. Sometimes they showed up at lunch and forgot to go back to work, or came after work and forgot to go home. They were unremarkable men in white short-sleeve shirts and $2 ties with nothing more interesting to say than, "Can I buy you a drink?" My father was full of swashbuckle, a charming liar with a hypnotic gaze and an encyclopedic knowledge of useless trivia and small-time cons. He wore black jeans and a green felt fedora. He was nothing like the unremarkable men in the Mardi Gras, nothing like the clean-shaven, cigarette-smoking, button-down fathers around our neighborhood. Fred and his life before my mother were a tough act to beat, but I was finally in the same league as him, beginning a life that would give me my own collection of entertaining stories. I was even a step above. I could have had a bumper sticker made. My topless Bart can beat your burlesque house. I was sure he'd be secretly proud of me if he knew where I worked. The inside of Fred would be proud anyway. The outside of Fred would be angry because where I worked would have made my mother cry. I had cash, but the short-sleeve shirts and $2 ties weren't exactly pushing one another out of the way to wave dollar bills in my face. I had a body that appealed to black men, Puerto Rican men, and old Italian men. I had small breasts, a small waist, and an ass you could hang on to in a storm. Even without the attention of the $2 ties, though, there was rarely an empty bar stool in front of me. My section in Ravens were almost exclusively black. These were not the coloreds of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, nor the Negroes of the National Negro Congress, and not even the blacks of the Black Panther Party or the Black Power movement. Raven and I had the pimps. Pimps are not like regular men. They had more in common with the go-go bar owners and managers than they did with the men drinking next to them. The Times Square bosses were usually men, and usually mobbed-up men, who solicited customers for strippers or live sex shows in return for a share of their earnings. In other words, like pimps, the bosses were also panderers and procurers. The difference was really only one of semantics and legality. Every day on 40 Deuce, pimps turned out wearing new displays of feathered hats, polyester suits, and matching shoes of crocodile or alligator, known as crocogators. In cool orange sherbet, lime jello, grape jelly. A smart pimp doesn't drink much. He prefers to remain clear-headed and in charge. If they drank at all, they wanted drinks that sounded classy or faintly foreign, like Harvey's Bristol Cream Sherry or Dubonnet. They wanted cocktails that matched their outfits and coated their stomachs. Golden Cadillacs and Brandy Alexanders, cocktails that needed shaking, and they came to see me shake them. They tipped. A $5 or $10 bill slid slowly over the bar for a $2 club soda. The offer of change waved away, sometimes without even bothering to make eye contact with me. The wave said, "I don't need to look at you to know you're waiting there, girl. You're insignificant, and you need to work harder if you want my attention." Pimps think topless dancing is a gateway drug to the life of prostitution. The ones sitting at my bar were betting on it. And every choice grows out of something. I would eventually dance topless when I got bored working behind the bar. I worked slinging drinks in a go-go bar because I was fired from a law firm. I was fired from the law firm because I wouldn't pay attention to the penis on my desk. Because I wanted some choice in the matter of who I fucked. Because I had fucked too many people already, because I couldn't imagine anybody would want me if I didn't, because I couldn't stand to be with myself, because it was too loud in my head, because my parents had a bad marriage, because in the late 50s, divorce was not a thing a woman took lightly, because my mother's mother was divorced, and it was the Depression, and it wasn't easy. You can't even imagine. She worked all the time. All the time. That kind of if-then logic is like that Passover song. Then came the ox that drank the water, that quenched the fire, that burned the stick, that beat the dog, that bit the cat, that ate the kid. My father bought for two zuzim chad gad yo. It goes on and on. With that kind of thinking, it follows that the stock market crash of 1929, a year before my mother was born, was responsible for my desire to be a prostitute. Years and years after all this, when I am 10 or 12 years sober, a friend's cancer will come barreling back after 8 years of remission. At the same time, I find myself also extremely ill. Someone will invariably say how it isn't fair that his cancer is back, or that we've both gotten clean and sober just to wind up sick and frail. And he'll say, life isn't fair. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you get, and what you do with it is the measure of your character. It would take me a long time to get enough character to measure. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jodi. When I discovered my friend, writer Chris Kraus, the author of I Love Dick, had stripped, I had no idea. It was like, I lived in New York, she lived in New York. Why did I not know this? And I acquired her story. It came with an interview by Ali J. Carr, a burlesque performer and historian based in London. When I asked Ali for some suggestions for more writers, she wrote to me this. I went back and looked at the email. I was just paging Smart Stripper on Twitter. I don't even know if that exists anymore. When my Twitter friend Essence Revealed got in touch. I know her as a writer on burlesque, but it turns out she has a background of club stripping too. She's a gorgeous performer and a great writer. Does it exist anymore? Smart Stripper?
I don't know.
Well, I tried to look it up. I couldn't find it. So I Googled Essence. She was not only a glamorous burlesque performer, but an actor, author, self-empowerment coach, and activist. Ali E. introduced us. And Essence told me that she had, in fact, a story about club stripping. And in fact, it was much more complex than being about stripping. It was about acting. It was about depression. It was about so many things. I was completely bowled over. And I would be honored if you would read a piece of it to this audience.
Hello. Oh, get it, Rudy. I've been in my house for about 3 years now, so I don't even know how to act being outside. All right. So yeah, I was a stripper for about 10 years, and then 2008 happened, and Lehman Brothers folded, and that was one of the saddest days of my life because one of my favorite customers was a Lehman guy, and I started doing burlesque. And little did I know there was this whole debate between burlesque and stripping, but, you know, I always just say I'm a stripper because it pisses off some of the burlesque people. But that's neither here nor there. I'm going to read a bit of my piece from this book. Pull. I'm sitting in a waiting room at an audition. A group of blacktresses are talking about how slow the business has gotten. Remember when we used to go out 3 or 4 times a day? Girl, yes. If I get out 3 or 4 times a week, that's good. 3 or 4 times a week? This is the first appointment in 3 weeks. Everyone mm-hms and ahas about the situation. Eventually, the conversation turns around to what we're gonna all do to make a living now. I started working at TVI Studios. Hopefully meeting some of these TV and film directors will parlay itself into some work. Child, I had to go back to the restaurant. Lord knows I didn't want to, but I gotta pay rent. My husband just looks at anything I make as extra money. He said, as far as him setting up the household budget is concerned, I'm unemployed. We all start to laugh at that. I feel slightly jealous that she has a partner who supports her and her art. Only slightly, though, because she has 3 kids to raise, and I don't want to do that. This entire time, I've been quiet. I find that when I'm quiet, people tend not to notice. They're usually too busy talking about themselves to care that I'm not. I look at my roller bag. I know that inside are 7.5-inch clear stiletto heels, several different colored thongs, long gowns, baby wipes, and a bag of bags of makeup. I have finally escaped from the clutches of my bed enough to get to work. It's Tuesday, so that means Steve will be coming in to the strip club. He comes in between midnight and 1 a.m. He comes in late, hoping I'll be done with all the other customers. He wants to get me to himself. He usually gets me all to himself. He's wearing khakis and a polo shirt. He's a middle-aged, balding white man. He's a truck driver, and he's pretty fun to be around. If I'm on stage when he comes in, he'll have my drink waiting for me. He usually sits near the waitress station at the bar. I'll sip on the Malibu and pineapple juice he ordered for me while we chit-chat about everything and nothing. His daughter and her art skills as an artist are his latest fodder for conversation. If I dare mention that he should go to buy a dance or go to the VIP room, he'll protest. If I just sit with him for a bit, he'll eventually want to go into the VIP room for an hour. Once we're up there, he takes off his polo shirt and khakis. He's still fully dressed. Underneath, he wears leggings, knee-high boots, a lady's shirt, a bra stuffed with chicken cutlet-looking breast enhancements with pearl earrings stuck in to create the nipple effect. Now I call him Stephanie. Man, I went to this cross-dressing party and all these gay guys were trying to talk to me. It was awful. Oh, I'm sorry, Stephanie. I mean, where can a guy wearing a dress go to meet straight women? I don't know, but this is New York, so it must happen somewhere around here. Every time the VIP host comes to let us know that our hour is over, Stephanie pays to stay another hour. We're having a great time. We make up stories about all the adventures we'd have hand in hand in Amsterdam. In between talking and laughing, I dance for him. Sadly, the club has to close, and he has to go home and be Steve. Push. It's Thursday, which means Count Dracula is my regular customer tonight. He earned the name from the chocolate dancers he fancies. I suppose we could have named him Count Chocula. He has a thick German accent, greasy gray hair, and he smells like he hasn't bathed or brushed his teeth ever. The smell of red wine and cigarettes permeates his breath. However, he will want to stay in the VIP room for 2, 3, 4 hours, which means $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. He whispers way too closely to my nose. You have 3 lovers, and one of them is a woman. You are such an artisan, so soft, so tender. I get up to escape the smell of his breath and start to dance for him, facing away from him. As I hover over his lap, he trips me so that I land on his lap. He grabs my arms. You run, but the chase, it is all a part of it, isn't it? I try to get up, but I can't. You need someone who will be there for you, help you out financially from time to time, someone who will not restrict your movement. He has me pinned down by my arms. I sit and I sigh and I listen. I regulate my breath so that I'm breathing out in order to avoid breathing in that smell of his. Then his hand starts to make his way to my thong. I forcefully free one arm so that I can grab his hand before he reaches my pussy. Don't move, leave it. I want you to enjoy it. How could he possibly think that this is enjoyable for me? I use jujitsu-like movements to keep his prying hands away. He is what we call in the industry a lot of work. We tend to rotate him among us because some weeks you just don't have the mental energy for the fight. I keep checking the time on my watch every so often behind his head. I close my eyes and I picture 21 $100 bills to help ease the time on by. I think about how many people say stripping is such easy money. I daydream about punching someone in the mouth next time I hear those words escape from their lips. Pull. It's Friday, and a group of high rollers have come in for a bachelor party. There are about 10 of them. They have corralled about 20 strippers to party with them in the far back right corner of the club. It's one of Tommy's last nights of freedom. They celebrate by popping bottle after bottle of champagne. They were making it rain on us with $100 stacks of singles at a time. We were given garbage bags to collect our money. What they were spending had long since gone over the limits of what we could fit into our purses. In the dressing room, there is a house mom. She keeps an eye on things there and sells us or provides to us anything we could possibly need, from aspirin to tampons to dresses and shoes. Those of us who were close with her and trusted her handed her our bags of money for her to organize while we went back out to make some more. She got big tips that night. There is an electric energy in that corner of the room, the rush of the music, the pace, bottle after bottle of Cristal popping, the rush of extreme celebration. Tonight, I forget to remember that I'm supposed to be ashamed. I forget to remember how much I'm supposed to hate this game. I'm getting paid to hang out and play. This is a mutually beneficial fantasy. They get to be that player who knows how to keep the dime pieces running his way, and I get to be that I deserve every bit of money in your pocket just because I look like me kind of chick. This is an excellent night at the night job.
Thank you, Essence. Lily Burana, as was said, was supposed to be here tonight, and I just wanted to mention there was in the book was supposed to be a discussion of motherhood. Well, Lily got strep throat from her daughter, so that's why she couldn't be here, and that's about as much about motherhood as we're going to hear tonight. Just what happened after the stories I got in around 2015 or so, which is when I met these goddesses, was that it was very difficult to find stories. You know, the internet had not exploded, and it was just hard when I expanded the search until finally, after about a decade, the internet did explode, and there were a lot of blogs appeared on it, you know, with stories and essays and personal accounts and advice columns from, you know, one stripper to another on how to behave and what kind of lighting to use and what songs to play in a set, and various sites. And I met activist writers who contributed pieces to the collection while writing essays about decriminalization, about fosta sesta, about fighting fosta sesta and unionization, and their voices joined the chorus of these amazing writers who have read. And so I collected stories, but then in 2019, I read a piece online that was unlike any piece I had read so far. Her voice was different. The story was different. It came from such a unique perspective that I was completely blown away. And instead of saying anything about it, I would just rather have this extraordinary writer just read a piece of her work for you. So, Reese Piper, please read, if you will.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you so much for your kind words, and thank you everyone for being here. This is a piece about how I discovered that I'm autistic, that I'm on the spectrum while working as a stripper. Before working in strip clubs, I struggled to read people's emotions through cues like facial expressions, postures, and tone of voice in real time. I processed events after the fact with tenuous evaluation, as if I were peeling off layers of old wallpaper. At the time, it was not something I had words to explain, so I turned the blame on myself. Whenever I struggled to understand if someone was angry or bored, I went home and berated myself for being ditzy and dumb as I obsessively evaluated the night. I just need to try harder to be more present, I told myself. One time I went to a dinner party my sister hosted. A few of her colleagues and friends sat around her table while we snacked on hummus and bread. And when someone asked me about my recent trip to Europe, I rambled incessantly, illustrating the nightclubs, the hostels I stayed in, even how I bled through my powder blue dress because I forgot to change my tampon. Excuse me, sorry. My voice was loud, a pitch you use at a concert, not inside. And I can see their faces now, wide-eyed and uncomfortable, but at the time they coalesced into one indistinguishable figure, Dave Matthews playing in the background, taking precedent. I didn't know what slow processing was then, but I was aware that I felt embarrassed a lot and lonely. Facial expressions, body language, and eye contact are the bones of communication, and it's quite difficult to build and maintain relationships without the ability to read them. So I meticulously designed a persona who nodded at the right time, rehearsed lines, smiled when appropriate, monitored personal space, and spoke quietly. Before going out, I crafted note cards, scribbling how long to talk about acceptable topics, in which to stay clear of altogether, like my period and small talk. The persona was a mask that helped me appear to interact in the moment, but in reality, I crept by, 3 paces behind everyone else. After 2 years of practicing and 2 years of dancing as a stripper, most people I met told me that I was a great listener, unaware of how much time I spent in my room rehearsing the correct reactions. I didn't want anyone to know how much I struggled, so I let very few people get close to me, better than anyone finding out that I couldn't really socialize, that I was a fake. And one day my friend Sarah invited me to her birthday party, my least favorite social situation, a dinner party with unknown people. True, I was better at picking up more obvious cues like eagerness and anger now, but group settings were still really strenuous, too many subtleties to keep track of. But I hadn't seen my friend in a while, and I missed her. So I packed up my lace teddy and Red Bull and headed over to the restaurant before work. There were 6 of us around a small table, and the hour and a half crawled by. I can't remember the other people's faces or even what anyone spoke about, and I prayed that no one would ask me personal questions. Sarah tells me you just got home from Amsterdam, my friend's brother said politely, turning in my direction. His words mixed in with the background conversation and sounded like another language. I broke out in sweat. I'm sorry, what? I asked. He repeated himself. A second later, the words clicked, and I smiled and looked at his nose instead of his eye while chewing over my words and length of speech, trying to offer the version of my trip that he wanted to hear. Sarah got up to go to the bathroom. I quickly walked over to her and asked, were people bored when I spoke? No, not at all. What's wrong? Nothing. But I have to go. I'm sorry, I have work. She looked confused as I hurried out the door. I didn't really have to go to the club. I made enough that week to warrant a night off with my friends. But work felt easier than this social performance. I let out a sigh of relief as the taxi plowed across the Williamsburg Bridge. I walked under the familiar lights in the dressing room, squirted a dollop of foundation on my hand, and painted the dark circles under my eyes. And for a brief second, I wondered, is something wrong? Surely work shouldn't be more comfortable than a night out. But then I swallowed those thoughts and walked onto the floor to escape from myself. I sat down at the bar and ordered a Hennessy. The birthday was successfully buried, and I was buzzing from the bliss of escape. I spotted a man at the bar, alone, tall, bald, with a kind smile and a glass of whiskey in his hand. I ran through the formula that I crafted to connect with customers, and we got along right away. Hennessy is a strong choice, he commented. I said it's an underrated drink. I'll take your word for it, but can I get you another one? 10 minutes passed. I suggested the private room, and he agreed. The private rooms were where I connected with customers, sometimes in a way that was more intimate than my relationships outside the club. There, a massage of the shoulders let them touch me, express vulnerability. I bantered for hours, something I was never able to do before. With fewer stimuli around, it was easier to focus and converse back and forth in a way that felt less strenuous than at the restaurant hours before. You have a strange rhythm about you, he remarked, smiling as I cradled him. Customers who spend money like water don't care if I'm odd. They want an experience. My weirdness is worth their paycheck. And after 2 hours, I excused myself for a moment to go to the bathroom. And there, I got a message from Sarah. I miss you. I wish you didn't have to work. It's not the same without you. And below the picture was the dinner crew, laughing with their arms wrapped around each other. Looking at it, I felt such a pang of loneliness and regret that I broke down in the doorless toilet stall, my eyeliner smearing like watercolor on canvas. Why am I only alive at work, I asked. Why can I give so much to my customers and so little to my friends? Maybe I was just being stupid because I was drunk, but I wanted to be an active participant in my life instead of walking around confused all the time, experiencing my days after they've happened, passive from the sidelines. I wanted connection. Work was a temporary balm, but the interactions there were fleeting, not enough to sustain my longing for people. And there, the force of my rotting loneliness hit like a tidal wave, as the reality of how much I struggled to navigate social settings outside the club settled in. I allowed myself just one sob before I fixed my face and performed for the last half hour. And when I got home, I couldn't get out of bed for days, my sheets disheveled, dirty, with my self-loathing. Desperate for answers, I started scrolling through online forums for women with ADHD, wondering, on the surface, if I might have an attention deficit disorder. Looking for an explanation, I started asking for advice, addressing some of my other issues first, like getting lost in obsessive thought and being forgetful. And within minutes, responses flooded in that my symptoms resembled ASD. What is ASD, I asked. Autism spectrum disorder. I scoffed. What? But after I read articles on how autism manifests in women, the various different ways that it has gone ignored, there wasn't room for doubt. The evidence was clearly outlined in the bullet points on my laptop. Central to autism is a difficulty experiencing life in real time. Many autistic people can't filter out information, which makes it difficult to zone in and focus. All those years, I couldn't read people's cues because I struggled to cancel out the world around me. At my sister's house, the background music, the forks scraping on plates, the blue walls, they all swam in front of people's facial expressions. But in the private rooms at the club, there was no outside stimuli. The rules were clear, the distractions minimal, so I could focus and interact. And women in the ADHD forum invited me to the group for autistic women, and there I saw myself 100 times over. Scrolling through were women like me, sex workers, performers, artists, writers, all struggling to make sense of their invisible differences in their own socially awkward, wacky, and beautiful way. Over time, I learned to pull the blame away from myself and label the things about me that were naturally different, not defective. I learned to stop punishing myself when I got overwhelmed in conversations, to stop beating myself up when bright lights blanched out facial expressions and when background noise canceled out people's words. I took a deep breath and resisted pretending to listen and asked, "Can you say that again without apology?" I forgave myself when I slipped outside social norms and said something weird. No more being sorry for things I can't help. People would love me or not, and frankly, I was okay with the risk. Thank you.
Thank you to all the extraordinary readers. And we have some questions from the audience. So we shall ask. First question for everyone is, a lot of the narratives around stripping, and I assume narratives from other materials on this anthology, are that it is dangerous for women. How has it been, how have your experiences been in terms of stripping?
Yes, sir.
All right, these mics are on.
Yeah.
Oh, this one. So should I say this again? Okay, yes. This question is, a lot of the narratives around stripping, and what I wanted to add is probably not in this collection, are that it's dangerous for women. So how have, or not, your experience has been, dangerous or not? Have you found them in general?
I don't, I feel like working in nightlife in general has its dangers, and, I eventually went from day shift to night shift. I don't really know, because I worked in so many different clubs and had so many different experiences. I definitely worked in some where I was anxious all the time about things happening, from customers or from management or in the parking lot, whatever. And then I worked in some where it was absolutely not a concern. So I think it's a little bit of working conditions issue and a nightlife issue, and not just a sex work issue.
Mm-hmm.
Not to evade the question, but that's been
No,
my experience.
that makes sense. I mean, I think what one sees in movies is that it's always dangerous because it's a moral. It's kind of a moral question. You should not do this because you will die. In terms of any kind of sex work, not just stripping. It's sex work in general. But Jodi, please answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, and it was dangerous, but partly that was some of the draw for me. I mean, when I was working, I was drunk or high most of the time, and I was there for the the drink and the drugs, and the fear. You know, I liked living on the edge, but also my era, I think it's different than the era. The minimum wage was like 2 something when I was dancing. It was pre lap dancing, pre private rooms. It was the men were completely in charge. The men who went to the clubs were ashamed to go to the clubs. Women had to lie about what they did. It was very disempowering for women. And it was dangerous in that way because you couldn't ask for help. I had a friend that was murdered. We knew who did it. You went to the police didn't care. It was a different era in New York, so I don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like at any other era, but then sex work and you were on your own, and anything that happened to you, you got what you deserved.
Well, another thing to bring up, and Jodi brings this up too, is dangerous how. I mean, I assumed reading this that it was dangerous because if you were a sex worker, you would be murdered and there was no way out. You get out or you get killed. However, there are other dangers. If you speak up, you lose your job. You know, if you speak up, there are terrible things that happen to you in a psychological way. And that is debilitating after a long period of time. But is that true of any job? Is that true of work in general? Do we have to then do an all-out assault on capitalism? You know, is it a woman's thing, or is it something with the nature of this work itself? And things have, you know we have friends who are unionizing strip clubs in California, because things haven't changed. But it's not necessarily physically, they're not going to beat these women up. They are going to deprive them of their living. So it's dangerous in that respect if they see that these women are standing on the line. But Essence, what has your experience been?
I think I straddle in between the worlds. I would always go and look for reviews of clubs. And I would pick the clubs that the men reviewed the worst, because I figured those were the clubs where the women were doing the least. And I also knew how to create an image of the exotic, and I used that to my advantage. So I often was in the quote unquote corporate clubs where there was security, and I could just pay a security guard extra to keep an eye on me. I'd be one of, at that time, if there were 3 black girls, that was a lot. Like, one of us had to get fired or leave before they brought on another. Whereas before going into the clubs, I was working as an executive assistant in the big banks of New York. And I was spoken to as if I had no brain, even though oftentimes I had way more education and world experience than those men in finance. I cried every day in the bathroom before I went to my cubicle. It was not good for my mental health. So what was more dangerous? Physically, walking down the street as a woman is dangerous. When I left my house today, and this is the first time I wore makeup in a long time, and I actually got comments where I usually don't, and I was like, oh, here's this bullshit again. But when I'm inside of the club, if somebody says something to me and I don't want to engage, I can walk away. Nobody's going to say anything. In fact, I remember one time someone talked to me for about an hour and a half and didn't want to pay me money. And I was like, no, you just wasted an hour and a half of my shift. I went and got a security guard, and I was like, he owes me money for wasting my time. I can't do that on the street. So I know, right? So yeah, danger, what you see in the movies and what is in real life, anywhere can be dangerous. So you just have to be self-aware no matter what you're doing as a woman. So stripping isn't necessarily dangerous. Life as a woman is dangerous.
Yeah, +1 on that.
Yeah, just building off that, I feel like danger is a relative or subjective experience. Like, working 5 days a week for me as a disabled person with autism is really dangerous for me, because it will give me a mental breakdown or cause me to have seizures, or I need the time off that stripping can provide. So that, to me, even though there are difficult things that come along with working in the night, like the pressure to drink, dealing with drunk customers, potentially like abusive management because we don't have any labor rights, that to me overrides, like that is the pro of having that freedom of time is less dangerous for me. But I will also say too, as a side, this like fear or this idea that stripping is always dangerous or that it's like a special kind of danger, that it's separate from other jobs, stops us from actually talking about dangerous work conditions. Because we're so afraid of being seen as like victims, or we're afraid of our jobs being taken away, that we can't actually talk about what actually might go on in the club when we do need help or when we do want to advocate for ourselves in better ways. You know, we don't have people who readily advocate for Uber drivers or Amazon workers, but it's complicated with us.
Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you, from just my experience with friends on the West Coast was during the pandemic, after Fosta Sesta was, we couldn't advertise on back pages anymore. You couldn't even write the word stripper. You had to put a K on scripper because your accounts could be frozen. The FBI was all over everybody. The interactions with the police were really bad. Friends of mine like Antonia Crane, who wrote the introduction to this anthology, had been arrested several times. That there are other dangers for just speaking up about one's what one does, being categorized. Those are huge dangers mentally, and, the whole virgin whore dichotomy is a danger, and it goes on. But even the idea now where people still say to a woman who's been hurt in some ways, if they're asked, what were you wearing? I mean, that still goes on today, which is shocking. So this question is, what is that gray area of, when do women stop being raped or assaulted, And that's at the heart of a lot of what you're saying. So the next question moves on to a much more fun question.
We have more questions.
Yes. Okay. But this is actually this is an actually advice question, which I think is actually a very great question. What are tips for a person who would like to strip but has no idea how to do it? Yeah, what tips would you give to that person?
Just go in for one shift, see if you like it, and then ask someone for advice after one shift. I would say that. Just make sure that you can do it before you learn. That's something that you think you can feel you can do before you learn like everything you need to know about it. I would just say go in and try it and then test it out.
We were talking about some of this beforehand. We were talking about, like, I was a lousy hustler, and there's so much of the money that you make in the strip clubs comes from tips. And that is not just while you're on stage looking adorable. It's really about the gab, because I've seen some very unattractive women make a lot of money because they can yap, and I couldn't. So it's social skills. And like you were talking, you have to learn how to talk to people or listen to them. You know.
Yeah, I think no matter how many pole dancing videos you watch or how many burlesque videos you watch, you're still going to have to talk to the guys. You can't get out of it. That is the main thing I want people to know. You cannot get out of it.
Yeah.
I would go Joe runs a school for burlesque, which may be actually a good way to jump into the idea of it's just burlesque. I'm not saying just, but it teaches you how to move, right? Teaches you how to move. Moving is important, right? How to move, that's a good start.
I think there are a ton of that's what I mean though. There's a ton of how to do it, how
Yeah.
to do the moves, how to make the costumes, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the talking to people,
Right.
and that's such an individual thing.
Yes.
And I went through phases where I would just sit with people because they would buy me drinks. And then I quit drinking, and then I was like, oh my God. And so I think again, no matter what else you learn, and to know about tip outs, like just go on, places where strippers are talking and understand that a lot of strippers are paying to work. And a lot of the stuff on TikTok is a fantasy that these strippers are selling to either, sell their empowerment course or to other strippers, or to sell, remember that they're customer-facing accounts.
Yeah.
They're selling what they want the customers to think their life is like. So,
Yeah, when I worked, we got paid. And so we got paid $75 a night. And so you were walking out with that no matter what. And now I know there are women that at the end of a shift, they owe the house money after, 6 hours or something.
Stripping is a sales job.
Yeah.
Stripping is a sales job. If you cannot sell, but you can dance, don't become a stripper. The dancing is the least of it. Being naked in front of people is the least of it. I wasn't able to start making money until I figured out how to talk to the guys. That was my favorite part. If I could keep someone talking and interested and spending their money, giving them a reason to find interest in me and sell them on emptying their pockets. There's 100 girls, 80 girls working in this club. It's not easy. It's not an easy job. It is not an easy job. So if you are uncomfortable with asking for money, if you're uncomfortable with demanding big money, don't become a stripper. It's a sales job.
I will say, though, it does get easier, though. And I felt like I couldn't speak to anyone. I was just like, oh. But I read more sales blogs. I was more reading, guys on Wall Street were talking about.
Exactly.
And
that's what I was reading.
ABCs and always, how to manipulate people.
Lots of psychology of persuasion books.
Neurolinguistic programming was what I was studying when I went in.
Body language, mirroring, all those things.
So, at my peak earning point, I had never touched a pole.
I don't know how to pole dance.
trick.
I was a
I can't
dancer
pole,
for
I can't
10
pole.
years. I do not know how to do a pole
I
trick.
can just do the bend and snap.
I'm a great slow motion stripper, though, with that pole, but I can't do a pole trick to save my life.
Well, here's another question. How do you think platforms like OnlyFans are affecting strippers and clubs?
I know nothing about it.
I don't know.
I know
anything
that the
about
pandemic happened, and all of a sudden, a lot of girls that do burlesque, I saw them doing OnlyFans pages, and I was like, ooh, they're gonna be so sad when they realize the amount of sales and marketing they're gonna have to do. Money doesn't just show up because you're naked on the internet. So yeah, but I don't know anything about it. I know that my friends that do porn were like, what the fuck? Because before I only ever knew of my porn star friends being on OnlyFans. So, when the pandemic happened, it seemed like everybody had an OnlyFans, but I know nothing about it.
I don't think that people that want to go on VIP, though, and have an intimate experience really find it as a substitute, would be my guess, because I've been a professional dominatrix. The people that I would have Zoom sessions with were not the same people that I saw in person.
I'll say I don't have an OnlyFans, but for the strippers that do have an OnlyFans, it's now this great way for them to get people to subscribe because they'll just pass out their OnlyFans at the night in the club. So that's an extra way for them to make income. But I still feel like they're two separate businesses. And they might be overlapping in ways that maybe now there's more dancers, but the economy is struggling. So it's impossible to separate that from, anytime the economy is struggling, people are going to be working in this industry because they need money.
And there were a lot of people that said that burlesque became popular because strip clubs were shutting down, but the strip clubs did not shut down, and they were not the same audience. So there's a lot of I just think that people that want a certain experience aren't going to take a substitute.
Burlesque is fun.
Yes,
Burlesque is
fun.
it's having a sense of humor, and stripping is not, really.
A little bit.
It can be.
Well, we have time for one more question. and that is, can you speak to surprising ways in which the industry has changed over the past few decades? Well, that's a massive question. So just have you anything that comes to mind?
Well, I started in 2015. I will say that anytime the stock market is down, it changes drastically. So, like, customers change. So right now, I feel like because we're heading, or there's a fear of recession, or we're in a recession, that it's just harder to make money. But from what I hear from other people that have worked longer terms, that the job has become much more about the emotional side, emotional labor. I'm not sure. Maybe it was always like that, or if that's something that has happened with time. It's become more about connecting with customers and making money that way.
I think it depends on the club. But I would say the biggest differences that I saw starting from the late 70s. So I also was into the danger and the fear and the drugs and had that. But then in the mid 80s, it softened in Atlanta. But tip outs, number one, that we did not have that shit. We did not have the paying to work.
You get to keep your money.
We got to keep our money. I mean, we tipped out the DJ.
I didn't tip out anybody.
Well, but we didn't have the tip out system now where people are paying $200 and some to work, even though the bar is charging $20 for a beer is ridiculous. And then pleasers did not exist.
What are pleasers?
Pleasers are those acrylic shoes they started to be mass marketed in the mid 90s. They didn't exist until then. I know
I've
the history
always
of acrylic
existed
shoes.
with the pleasers. Yes, I actually worked at clubs that required we wear clear heels. And
We were forbidden to wear them when they started to come out.
Wait, what shoes did you wear?
We were forbidden to go on the poles. So
I
I
wasn't
didn't
allowed to
see
dance on
pole
poles
dancing
either.
until the 90s, although I think it was more popular in Canada.
I started dancing in 2000 or 1999, and all I remember hearing from it seems like every generation of strippers, the last generation made way more money easier.
So much more money.
So much more money easier. And they did so much less for the money. And then the new girls are destroying it.
Is that just so this? I think this is just stripper talk, thoh, right?
You know, yeah, I don't-
back in my day, I used to make $3,000 in an hour.
Yeah. 2 seconds. I remember working at one club in Queens that would give us a little bit of payment, but then when I went into Manhattan, it was shock that I had to give these people hundreds of dollars every night to work. But at that time, early 2000s, money was everywhere. But then when 2008 hit and the market changed, that money wasn't easy anymore. I have no idea what it's like now. But from 2000 to about 2007, it was great. Those boys had their expense accounts and their cards, and there were steakhouses in the clubs, and they could spend $3,000 at so-and-so's steakhouse in 45 minutes, and it was going to be written off from the company. But I don't know what things are
It's
like
strip
now.
steak and wine, women, and thongs at the
Yeah.
Cheetah.
In 1979, when I started, you got paid. You got a percentage of the drinks you sold. And then you got your tips, and the management, the men had not yet figured out that women would pay to work there. It hadn't even occurred to them yet. So you got to keep everything. In Times Square, we didn't tip out anybody. Maybe you gave the doorman if he got you a cab or something like that. But we also didn't have our own set of songs. It's like whatever the DJ who was somebody's son, felt like playing, and the dressing room was the bathroom, so you had 8 girls shoved in a 2-stall bathroom trying to get dressed. It was a little rougher, and but the money was all yours. The money was all yours.
Well, I worked at the Pink Pussycat briefly downtown. When they were paying people, there were no tip outs. At the same time that another club that I knew of, I'm not sure I should mention them, was charging hundreds of dollars to work. And this is in the same borough. Burlesque clubs can't charge people to work.
No, one of Mel's clubs.
I can't say any names. I can't say any names. There are names I will not speak.
Well, everybody, now you know what to do. Now you know that if there's a recession coming, you need to get a subscription to the business section of the Wall Street Journal, and you need to learn everything, because when the economy changes, you can just start to strip with the advice of all these extraordinary OG gangsta stripper writers who all have their books out by that time. And the first thing you can do with the money you've earned from stripping is buy their books. So thank you so much for coming. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you,
Lizzie.
Oh my God, you
Thank you,
matter.
Lizzie.
for putting this together and having us.